Hey guys, this is God of Politics. Welcome to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But in today's video, I will be talking about the Alaska Senate race in 2022. And many of you may be wondering, why am I talking about Alaska? Alaska is a state that Donald Trump won by more than 10 percentage points. It's a state that hasn't gone Democratic since 1964. So why am I talking about it? It's a safe Republican state. Well, it does have a very interesting race coming up in 2022, and that is because of three-term Senator Lisa Murkowski, the current incumbent. And there are a lot of revelations in this race because Lisa Murkowski is well known as a moderate Republican, the most moderate Republican who votes with Joe Biden the most, even more moderate than Susan Collins. So that has attracted a lot of criticism from people like Donald Trump, from people in the Republican Party, including the Alaska Republican Party, who has decided to endorse her challenger. And her challenger, I don't really know how to say her name. Kelly Chewbacca, I think is how you say it, to be honest, but it does sound kind of funny, Chewbacca, but whatever. But Donald Trump did endorse Lisa Murkowski's opponent. Now, Lisa Murkowski hasn't said herself that she is running, but she has publicly expressed interest, and I do expect her to run at the end of the day. So if she does end up running, it'll be between her and Chewbacca as the two main Republicans running for this race. We also have a couple of other candidates running on the Democratic side. We probably will end up getting Al Gross to run for the Democratic Party. You do have, of course, you have Al Gross, who has publicly expressed interest, as it says here. He is an independent, but he does caucus. He said he would caucus with the Democrats. The Democratic Party of Alaska endorsed him in 2020 when he ran against Dan Sullivan and lost. So he would probably be effectively the Democratic candidate in the primaries. In the new system Alaska is adopting, where there is a top four primary system, they have an open primary with all the parties involved, but it is nonpartisan. So that would actually help Al Gross, I would say, in the sense that, he would be caucusing with the Democrats, but since he wouldn't even have a party label on him in the first place, it does give him a better chance of getting some more Democratic voters. But the system, the way it works, you have nonpartisan primaries, and the top four candidates from all the parties do advance to the general election. And then in the general election, they do have ranked choice voting, which is a process used in a number of states now. Maine uses it, New York City uses it, a lot of other localities use it in municipal elections. I know San Francisco uses it, for example, and other states have different forms of it, I guess you could say. Of course, Georgia has the runoff system, which is, in a way like ranked choice voting. Another name for ranked choice voting is instant runoff. So there's a number of states that use a system similar to this, but this is the first state to use this specific system where you've got the top four primary, and then in the general election you have ranked choice voting. So as you can see here, Lisa Murkowski has been endorsed by a number of people, including a Democratic Senator, Joe Manchin, who said himself he would not campaign against a single incumbent senator. You've got Mitch McConnell, who endorsed Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Jeff Flake, John Thune, Dan Sullivan, the other senator from Alaska, and John Barrasso. As for Kelly Chewbacca, Donald Trump did endorse her, Bill Stepien, and Justin Clark endorsed her. Those are executive branch officials from the Trump administration, but Trump wasn't necessarily that popular of a figure in the state of Alaska. He did win the state, but he only won it by 10 percentage points. If you go back to 2008, for example, McCain won it by more than 20 points, I believe, or some number similar to that. And of course, that was a large part due to Sarah Palin. But even in 2016, Donald Trump won the state by 14 percentage points. That went down to 10 percentage points in 2020. But it is still a strong performance, and Donald Trump does have a big impact in the Republican Party. So whoever he ends up endorsing, which in this case it has been Chewbacca, that is going to have a big impact. Now, Lisa Murkowski could really be in trouble in this race, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Why? So there's this article here from Elections Daily that talks about this race, and this is a map of the 2016 race in the state of Alaska, where Murkowski won as a Republican with 44% of the vote against Joe Miller, who was the candidate for the Republicans in 2010, who lost to Lisa Murkowski on a write-in campaign after beating her in the Republican primary. That was certainly a very remarkable race for Lisa Murkowski, but it was no longer 2010. And it's no longer 2016 because Lisa Murkowski doesn't have the same kind of support amongst Democrats as she did. While she does have a reasonably high approval with them, higher than any other group, it's still below 50%. And with Republicans, she's not popular either. And if we look at this 2016 map, it actually does show us a lot of things. And the first thing is that Joe Miller did well in the more Republican areas. If you look at the extremely detailed map from 2016 here, and we look at the precinct level, we can see here that the area where Joe Miller did the best was this precinct here where my cursor is, just outside of the Anchorage area. If we go down here and we look at that, we can see here that the Anchorage area has a little bit of blue, has a little bit of red. And we look at the area right outside of Anchorage, 76 to 15. That is the most Republican area in the whole Anchorage area, and that is an area that Joe Miller won. We also look at another area that he won, which was south of Anchorage. We look at this area over here. This is a precinct that he won, that Donald Trump won 79 to 12. This area won 77 to 14. This area won 79 to 13. And finally, we look at this other precinct up here. It's a precinct that Donald Trump won 69 to 20. So the areas where Joe Miller did the best are actually the most Republican areas, showing that a lot of Lisa Murkowski's support really came from Democratic voters, which is why you can see a lot of these areas up in the north and up in the western part of the state did go for Lisa Murkowski, but went for Hillary Clinton. These are areas that are very native heavy, and they are areas that went for Lisa Murkowski. We also look at the Juneau area, which went heavily for Lisa Murkowski. That's another area where you do have a lot of Democrats. And of course, the downtown Anchorage area was an area where Lisa Murkowski did quite well. And if you go to the downtown Anchorage area, that is another area where Hillary Clinton did quite well. So Lisa Murkowski got a lot of support from Democrats. And now that may prompt many people to say, well, isn't that going to help Lisa Murkowski in 2022 because she can get support from both the Republicans she still has support with and Democrats? Well, I can actually buy that argument, and I can see that, but it doesn't necessarily hold up. Because we do have this article here that talks about a poll, which I will show you, and it just talks about the approval ratings of these candidates and the poll that we saw. So we had a poll showing Lisa Murkowski at 33% approval. She's the most disliked senator in the United States because she's disliked by Republicans, of course, who, of course, don't like her for her impeachment vote, her more moderate stances, and many Democrats don't like her because of her stance on, a lot of the issues. For example, voting for Amy Coney Barrett, they don't really like her because of that. They don't really like her for some other positions, and just things have become more partisan overall. So that does kind of contribute to her 33% overall approval. And we did have a poll for this race, which showed that Kelly Shabaka was at 39%, Al Gross, the Democrat, or the guy aligned with the Democrats, is at 25%, and Lisa Murkowski is at 19%. So a lot of people were saying, of course, Lisa Murkowski can get support from both Democrats and Republicans to be able to win. But in this poll, you can see over here, she is in third place with 19% of the vote. And so the way it works in ranked choice voting is the last place candidate gets eliminated. In this case, it would be John Wayne Howe. His support would be transferred to the third place, to whoever they put second. Lisa Murkowski would still be third place in that scenario. So despite the fact that many of the Al Gross supporters would have put her second and many of the Kelly Shabaka supporters would have put her second, she is in third place overall, meaning that her support just goes away. It goes to these other two candidates who would end up being in the final round, where Al Gross ended up losing by 8 percentage points according to this poll. So that does spell a lot of problems for Lisa Murkowski because she's going to have to get into second place. Now, this article also talks about it a little here, how many people discuss the 2010 write-in win that Lisa Murkowski had. And this article says, basically, many people have to forget about that. It's time to stop talking about that because 2010 Lisa Murkowski is not 2020 Lisa Murkowski and what she's going to be in 2022. She's a much weaker candidate now. She doesn't have the same crossover support, and she's not as popular with Republican voters. And the new system isn't necessarily going to save her because, like it says here, usually the candidate that ends up being first in the ranked choice voting in the first round ends up going on to win. Now, there are exceptions to that, but we can look at the most recent example, which is the New York City mayoral race. Eric Adams had a 10-point lead at the beginning, despite a lot of the voters from other candidates going overwhelmingly to candidates not named Eric Adams. Eric Adams still ended up winning. Of course, like it says here, there's an exception to that, like Maine's 2nd district, but that was a very close race to begin with. The poll that we have here indicates that it's not a very close race to begin with. At least Mukowski wouldn't even make it to the final round in this scenario. So there are a lot of things to consider here. There are a lot of unknowns that we have to take into account, which is why it's hard to predict this race, which is why I could really see a lot of different scenarios happening. I could see a scenario where Lisa Murkowski ends up winning due to crossover support from Democrats and maybe even some support from Republicans, depending on who ends up coming second or third in this scenario. But I could also see a scenario where Kelly Tshibaka wins, where Lisa Murkowski comes in 3rd place, gives a lot of that support to the Democrats, gives a lot of that support to Kelly Tshibaka, but Kelly Tshibaka ends up winning, and she becomes the next senator. So I can't really see a scenario where Al Gross wins. Al Gross really isn't the type of candidate that can win in a state like Alaska. Back in 2008, the last time Democrats won a Senate race, it took Ted Stevens having corruption charges for him to barely lose to Begich back in 2008. We're not going to have a repeat of that in 2022. I don't think Al Gross is the kind of candidate that can win this race. Alaska's too red of a state. The history just is not in his favor. But I could see either Kelly Tshibaka or Lisa Murkowski winning, but we won't know what happens for quite a while now. But stay tuned to see what happens. So thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys later.